It's taken a while, but this might be the most impressive Eagles win of the entire year. We've seen some very narrow losses. Everything's been within one possession. The offense kept stalling out. It has just been one bump in the road after another. But finally, have they got that horrible weight off their shoulders? We're going to dissect that today. Myself, Liam Jenkins, we're with Cory Nidoh, our lead PSN Eagles writer, who's been kind of behind the battle scenes and seen quite a lot over the last few weeks down at Lincoln Financial Field. And I think we'll just start with that before we get into anything else. From what you've seen, obviously being in the locker room for a few of these games, how different was this performance today? Because all the warning signs I felt were still there, at least through that like opening 3 quarters or so, where we all felt that impending doom coming again.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like we were in line for another letdown after a 12-play, 75-yard opening drive where it was 24-esque of the Eagles. 4 straight running plays with Barkley. Sirianni was aggressive going for it on a pair of 4th downs, with the second one resulting in that 37-yard touchdown to A.J. Brown. You thought, hey, these great meetings that Kevin Patullo had mentioned, the players had mentioned, they were showing to bear fruit already, and then they just completely nosedived for the rest of that first half before Jalen Hurts and Devontae Smith kind of took over that game in the second half, and then Hurts played his best game of the season so far, and one of his best games, I think, as an Eagle. But yeah, I mean, this was a much needed win for this team, and some people might laugh and say, well, what do you mean that they were going to lose a third straight? That's not awful. It would have been just the second time since Nick Sirianni took over that they've lost 3 in a row. And it was the first time was back in 2023. So a much needed win against a very good Vikings defense. They came in with the second best passing defense in terms of yards per game allowed. They allowed like 157 a game, and Jalen Hurts threw for 328. So I think this is a big win. I think it gets a sour taste out of their mouths. It gets a sour taste out of the fans' mouths, and winning will always cure everything. But compared to what we saw last Thursday against the Giants, where they really couldn't do anything, to finding some type of rhythm when it mattered most, I think is a huge positive going forward.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head there. Is a lot of people coming into this week were circling it as a must win, and the immediate reaction from many was, well, it's Carson Wentz and the Vikings. It's hardly going up against, let's say, the Bucs or the Lions or whoever. But the reality is that you're right. Like you look at that loss streak that happened, just those brief 2 games, and it's easy to kind of displace the magnitude of that Vikings game that we just saw. But when you're talking about a defending championship team, when you're talking about a team that was favored quite heavily to go on and do it again, that made all of these tremendous off-season signings to retain their key players, to dish the money out where it's deserved, and ensure that offense will not change shape for the next 4, 5, 6 years. And you've got all these like Bugattis lined up, to fall short of that, and for the offense to look so different and so like soulless and almost devoid of what we've come to know and love, was scary. And it wasn't necessarily the fact that they were, losing games. It was more how they were losing and how they weren't winning. Because when they were winning, it was by 1 possession. It could have easily gone the other way a lot of the time. This was the first time where the writing was on the wall, which had been in the case for every game we've seen this season, and they didn't buckle. And they actually found out a way to win. I mean, I don't want to play conspiracy and start connecting dots, but I feel like as soon as the Saquon injury happened and it looked like they were maybe trying to take the load off him a little bit just in case, was just when all the floodgates opened and Hurts and Smitty just went absolutely ballistic. And it just makes you, maybe it just took that to reinvigorate it. Oh, well, if we're trying to protect a lead, we don't have to just run between the tackle 12 times in a row. Maybe we can air it out. Maybe we trust our receivers enough in these big time situations. And that will be a jolt for, and this is no shot to him, he's a rookie offensive coordinator. You've got teething problems. And if you're protecting a lead, you protect it with everything. And if you trust one of the best running backs in the league to do that and just to chew the clock, fine. But maybe a performance like this will just open up that confidence that he then has in receivers to go, all right, we're up by 6. There's 4 minutes left. Let's just take a shot. Let's do some play action. Let's wrinkle this in and not just drastically go from what was previously working.
No, I agree. And I think for that, too, you mentioned how they can run out the clock in different ways. They're going to have to, because they weren't able to do that today with Saquon Barkley. No. I mean, this was another game where I thought they could finally get the running game going. The Vikings ranked like 27th, I believe, in rushing yards allowed per game. They were a bottom feeder in the league in terms of rushing defense. And Barkley finished for 18 carries, 44 yards, and only a 2.4 average. And now I understand it's not on Barkley. The offensive line is just continuously getting banged up. They play with pretty much that majority of the game without Cam Jurgens. Toth, cool story. Howie Roseman's got to get a dependable depth O lineman in there. I just don't see Toth holding up much longer. And it was great to see the play call there when it mattered most on that 3rd and 9. AJ Brown faked as if he was going to hit the slant, which is, one of his favorite routes that he likes to run. And Isaiah Rodgers bit on it so hard. And then Brown just jetted up the field and Hurts was able to drop it into his arms. And that was the dagger in the game. And yeah, maybe this year they will have to rely on Jalen Hurts in this passing game to close out games. And sometimes that can be scary because obviously incomplete passes stop the clock and it gives the opposing defenses and the opposing team a chance to maybe get the ball back without wasting all their timeouts to preserve the clock. So it's going to be a different recipe this year, I think, to win compared to what we saw last year. I think that's kind of a proven fact now here. We're heading into week 8 now. The running game just isn't where it needs to be. Does that mean that it can't get to where it was last year? Not necessarily, but also history shows 2,000-yard rushers the following year, they struggle, whether it's on the running back, offensive line. And let's face it, it's a combination of the two because the O-line had a run block a lot. The Eagles were a predominantly run-heavy offense last year. So this O-line is certainly taking some hits, and we'll see how the injury report comes out because they lost a lot of they lost some big-time players here today. I know Dory Jackson was out with a concussion. Azeez Ojulari didn't come back in. Jeremiah Trotter Jr., obviously Cam Jurgens. So they got to get healthy again. And when they take on the Giants, who right now are playing the Denver Broncos tough out in Denver.
Yeah, and I think you hit a really good point there. I mean, we've seen Howie Roseman really anticipate these trends. And I think I always point back to the quarterback thing where when you see rookie quarterbacks really break out and steal the show, you can look at Jaden Daniels this year. You can look at CJ Stroud in his second season, even go back at Josh Allen. Dak Prescott is the prime example, is that the league just catches up. Like everyone is so intent to try and find ways to win. If you've got something that works, the defense's job is to take it away, obviously. You don't have a 2,000-yard season, the greatest total season of all time, including playoffs, without teams going, okay, right, let's just focus in a bit here because maybe our groups are a bit lighter. Maybe that's where there's an edge. So let's just focus up short at the middle of the field and force them out wide. And that should be a plan for any team, is to force a quarterback to throw. Your edge there comes if you've got an elite quarterback, which we all know Jalen can be on the day. And we know that he is, he's very protected with the football. He only takes shots that he trusts in. I think the difficulty for the Eagles is simply just trying to work out how you facilitate all this. How much do you ride Saquon Barkley? But as you mentioned, in a game where the Vikings were not a prominent run defense, the pass defense has been good, the run defense has been leaky all season, and you only have 18 carries is a lot. That's upper, top 10% probably of average carries per game for a running back. And you only get 44 yards out of it. There has to be something that clicks before that injury to go, this isn't working, or let's get a more bigger variety in. And I know we were just building on the same point, but I really do feel as though that scared to Saquon had to wake something else up and show this other side to the team. And it was one last year they were really unafraid to dig out. They would happily beat teams in a multitude of ways. And it was almost their calling card of well, you never know what we're going to do. We can beat you through the air. We can beat you on the ground. We can do all the trickery stuff. We got the touch, and everything was just up for debate. And the only, I think, charismatic feature to this offense this year has been when they're on the tush push situations. And a lot of the time, Dallas Goedert's involved in these little pitch receptions, or you see what they do against the Giants and go completely away from that and just do it 4 times in a row. The Vikings snuff that out as well. So it's even that is now being taken away. They've got to get back to this almost creative freedom and fun where they want to dive deeper and go, okay, there's an opportunity here. Let's get this guy involved. Let's get the ball just moving around. Because the more it just forces down one avenue, is the easier it is to stop. And we started to see flashes of it today. So the question now is that can they roll into the next few weeks Obviously, they've got to buy in, was it in 2 weeks' time as well? So maybe that's going to be, quite good for them. But just to build on this and say, now we know we can again. Like, that's the reassurance if we can air it out, we can run the ball at times. We've got to try and stay creative and stay on top of this before those floodgates come coming down.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it gave a lot of confidence to the team. Saw a video just circulating around on X where Jalen Hurts just told Howie Roseman that they're not going to lose again. These guys are feeling pretty good. And I just tweeted out from Next Gen Stats, Hurts completed all 5 of his deep passes of 20-plus air yards for 215 yards and 3 touchdowns today. That's the most he's had in any other career game and the second most of any quarterback this season in terms of the deep passing yards. So you mentioned it earlier. When Jalen sees a deep shot that he knows he can make, he's going to pull the trigger. And we saw him miss on 2 of them earlier in the season. He didn't miss on any today, and it was against a really good defense led by Brian Flores, who likes to confuse quarterbacks. And I think this is a very positive sign for this offense moving forward. I thought there were still some things that they got to clean up. Again, we talked about in that first half, the 3 straight 3-and-outs, and then that drive to close out the half where they just kind of waved the white flag and it ended in a sack. Didn't love to see it. The defense, I think, deserves a lot of credit as well. Minnesota went into the red zone 5 times and had to kick 4 field goals. I mean, that is a big turning point in that game as well. Carson Wentz was doing Carson Wentz things as per usual. But, I think this is a win that you got to go back, watch the film, and say, okay, throw out everything that we just tried to do after that scoring drive because it didn't work, and take that second half and say, okay, what do we do well here? And that's what we have to implement for a full 60 minutes. Because, again, they didn't play a complete game on offense. There was times where I'm sure everybody's watching like, oh, well, here we go. They're not going to score again, and the Vikings could kick their way to a victory at this point. And then they found a way to turn the switch on. And Pam Oliver asked Jalen post-game on Fox. She said, what changed in this short amount of time from the Giants game to this game? And obviously they had a mini bye, so it's a little bit of an extended period. But Hurts kind of chuckled, and he's like, I don't really know. Like, I have to watch the film. So something clicked. Devontae Smith is a beast. I just want to give Devontae Smith his flowers. I don't know how a man of that stature takes those types of hits that he does. He is just an absolute baller, an absolute career day for Devontae. It was great to see A.J. Brown get involved with 2 touchdowns as well. So I think there's a lot to build on for this offense. I think the running game is still in question. Saquon Barkley is going to be averaging like less than 3.4 yards a carry after this game, I'd imagine. So they got to try and get something going here against the Giants because New York's going to come in red hot. They're feeling good off that Thursday night win, and they're beating the Broncos right now. So, this isn't going to be an easy week next week, but I think moving forward, you get healthy. You mentioned that bye week coming in a couple weeks. I think that could be a big part for this team to get healthy and try and right the ship to play complementary football on offense from here on out.
Yeah, I think there's a couple really good points there you mentioned. And I'm sure we're going to gush over the defense shortly, but I need to go back, and I was trying to subtly Google it then and find out how many games the Eagles have scored opening drive touchdowns this year, because it's got to be all of them. I think they've scored at least 3 points on all of the drives that they've had. Again, I could be wrong. It's just from memory. And I wonder how much of that goes into the mentality, because the same pattern continuously takes place, which is they start out brilliantly. We all get roped back into, oh, we're so back, here we go. And then the next 3 or 4 drives is just punt, 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 and they just can't sustain anything. And it just feels like that it just switches to we've got a lead, protect. And then when they don't have a lead, or it's in jeopardy, or something changes, you see some of the most beautiful football you could possibly imagine. And I think it's the juxtaposition which really frustrates people. But to be honest, the fact that it's even happening, the fact that we're here talking about this Eagles team winning a game the way they have, with Jalen playing the way he did, you can't ask for more than that, I don't think. Like, there's still, as you said, a lot to improve on. One area where I think there isn't as much to improve on is certainly the defense. I think given that the hits they've taken, like, let's not forget that edge position now is on bare bones, to a point where a 75-year-old Brandon Graham is debating coming out of retirement because Nolan Smith's on IR at this point. They've just lost Zadarius Smith. You've got Jalix Hunt and like Patrick Johnson and like your two edge rushers, or like Azeez or Jilari. Like, we're not talking heavy hitters off that edge, which leaves a lot of tough work for the guys inside. And when you see a play like Jalix Hunt today making an off the ball pick, which was just filled me with immense joy. The secondary, I think Cooper DeJean is enjoying one hell of a second season. I think that is something that's really stood out. Makuba got another pick, which is great. But to me, the way DeJean played today was so crucial in the way the defense performed, especially down in the red zone. Now it's a lot of opportunities where he was involved in around the ball. And Quignon's second year has been a little bit more subtle, a little bit more bumpy, and come down from those rookie highs. I think DeJean has only got better, and it's something that as the season goes on, it's really starting to stick out more and more.
Absolutely. I was just looking it up. They've scored points on 5 of their 7 opening drives this season.
There you go.
Chiefs and the Broncos were the 2 games that they did not score points on. But no, I'm curious, depending on Adoree Jackson's health, do they move Cooper to the outside? We saw DeJean on the outside a little bit today. He had that nice pass breakup against Jefferson that I thought was a touchdown. I thought that was just the tip of your cap, a future Hall of Fame wide receiver going up and high pointing a ball, and Cooper DeJean was able to just knock it out last second. I love what DeJean has been able to do. Makuba with that easy pick, he's got to shore up his tackling. I know he's a rookie, so we're going to see some growing pains with the second rounder, but he whiffed on that one tackle to allow Jay Jettis to streak up the sideline for a much bigger gain than what that play should have went for. So I think they're going to need to find a solution there, but you're right. Edge right now is paramount for Howie Roseman to improve, and not like a reclamation project. Not this guy had 10 sacks back in 2023. We can unlock him. No, they got to get like a Bradley Chubb or somebody that's proven to do it this season. I don't think Trey Hendrickson is in play for the Bengals. They just got a big win on Thursday night. I think they may just hold on to him unless they're offered an insane deal. There's a couple other guys that might be out there that Howie can make a move for, but even with BG sounding like he's going to rejoin this team, I still think they absolutely need to get a bona fide pass rusher who can also close out on pass rushers. We saw a couple times today where they got to Wentz, but they couldn't finish the play, especially on that last drive where Uche looked like before he got the sack that he was almost going to be able to get that to Wentz, and he made that ridiculous pass to Hawkinson, who had an incredible effort, and it just happened to hit the turf, and that was a big turnaround for the Eagles there. But that's a way where the pass rush just can't finish the job, and I think they need to get somebody that can get to the quarterback because they just don't have that type of playmaker right now. And I know they didn't do a lot of pass rushing with linebackers last year. They were able to get a lot of pass rush with the 4 linemen. Obviously Josh Sweat was the outlier there, but you got to find somebody to get to the quarterback and give these cornerbacks a little bit more breathing room and some extra time to kind of cover up some of the flaws that they've got with Makuba at safety, still learning, and that CB2 position, which has been an Achilles heel for this team even before the season started. But I will have to say, before Jackson got hurt, I only noticed he got burnt once or twice. There wasn't a lot of action his way where it's like, oh, well, there's Adoree Jackson getting toast again. So all things considered, against Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, I got to wait for the All-22 film to come out to really diagnose that. But from the surface, I think they held their own, all things considered.
It was definitely an improvement. And I think, again, it becomes down to that debate, isn't it? If do you want to be a good team and you'll get into the playoffs and maybe make a run, or do you want a championship roster and leverage everything again? And the Eagles are in a spot where the limited cap space they do have can be used in a really productive way this season. And a lot of their long-term players that they would want under contract already are. Like, the main issues now are going to be Jalen Carter's extension, potentially Jordan Davis. Obviously, we know he had his 5th year picked up. You look at, Nakobe Dean, and I know he's not obviously a prominent feature now, but long-term, like, could be a small contract. And then a couple of the guys on the back end who are like Reed Blankenship's going to need a new deal because he has been a real fixture. So it comes down to, I think, do you want to go all in on this year again, and then you risk maybe not being able to pay someone like Jordan Davis in the long term who could want to bag somewhere else? Or do you just ride out with what you've got, trust that this team is good enough because the foundations of it really is, and hope for the best? And it's a really tough spot. And I think what Howie's done better than most GMs in the league is find these like older edge rushers that are just maybe past their prime. Someone like a Chris Long, you can look back at Bennett as another one. Like he just really found a way to get the best out of these like Asian like fine wine players. And I think that would be the type of player that they do target, unless they go back to Brandon Graham for one last rodeo. But the importance of that edge position, I think, especially when you look at the schedule coming up, because if you've already learned, right, Carson Wentz isn't much of a threat with his legs anymore, mainly just because he does something stupid with the ball in his hands wherever he is on the field. So it's never really an issue. But if we look at the schedule that comes ahead, right, like Jordan Love isn't the most egregious rushing quarterback in the league, but he is something to be wary of, I think, for sure. Jackson Dart, we learned last Thursday how dangerous he can be. Jared Goff, not really an issue, but again, you look at someone like the stacked receiver room they have, and Jameson Williams could be a factor there. Like Dallas is an issue, maybe. Like Caleb Williams with the Bears. The Chargers are dangerous in their own right. The Commanders twice is a problem, and Josh Allen is a problem. That is every game but one, and the one is the Raiders, who is basically a glorified preseason contest by that point. So at every game, you're going to need edge rusher production, even if it is just a few pressures a game, because you're not playing quarterbacks that are just going to sit in the pocket all day and be a bit useless. They're either cerebral in the pocket. We can slag off Jared Goff till the cows come home, but I think we can all agree he has far outlived Carson Wentz as being the most effective quarterback from that class. And again, it's one of those points where they may not be the biggest names, but they will hurt you. Caleb Williams is another one. Like he can do damage on the ground. And if you look towards the playoffs, if you look towards the Super Bowl, if you look at any of the AFC teams, Drake May has been lighting teams up on the ground at the minute. And that's a possible Super Bowl matchup now. NFC Championship, we know what Baker can do. This has to be a big, big question now the Eagles need to answer, because the games aren't getting any easier when it comes to trying to limit this quarterback production.
No, you nailed it right on the head. And you know, you look at some of these games, the Bears that probably when the schedule came out, you circled as a win. That's not going to be that easy of a game. They've won 4 in a row now. Caleb Williams is starting to play better under Brian Johnson, who was the former OC in Detroit. But you're right. You need these edge rushers to just disrupt the passing. I mean, Jared Goff, yes, he's a statue back there. If they don't get any pass rush on that man, it can be nightmare fuel if he can pick apart the secondary. Now, you're hoping that Adoree Jackson and Kelee Ringo start to find their stride and start playing a bit better, and it's not going to be as scary as we thought this matchup could have been if Quinyon Mitchell wasn't able to play. But yeah, I think if you're looking at the roster right now, edge rush is definitely the most important position to tackle and reinforce. Because as cool of a story as this is with Brandon Graham, and we all love BG, he's not going to be out there every snap. You might get 10 to 15 snaps a game from him, and that's fine. They're going to be 110% high motor, guns blazing from BG, no doubt. But you still need somebody to fill the void, because this edge rushing room is beyond thin, as we talked about. We don't know how long Ojulari might be out for, and hopefully Jalen Carter, I think, can continue to progress. I thought this was one of his best games of the season so far. He struggled. I think, obviously, he's dealt with some injuries. That heel thing kind of popped up last week, and he was dealing with a shoulder injury, and then, of course, the whole spitting gate incident the season opener, and he wasn't available. But they need Carter to get back to what he did last year and just be an absolute force in the middle of that line and do what he did today, where he was able to just absolutely bull rush off of his man and get right into the quarterback's face and lay a hit and either force a bad throw like he did right into Jalix Hunt's hands, or at least an incomplete pass. Because, I mean, let's be honest, we remember what Jalen Carter did in the game against the Rams in the divisional round. He essentially won that game for them in the snow, getting to Stafford late in that game. So I think if he can get healthy, you add a legit edge rusher, I think this defense will be fine. Vic Fangio will find the ways and push the right buttons. It's, can they find that pass rush? But then, as we talked about it earlier, the offense needs to continue to find the consistency that they showed in the second half here today.
Yeah, 100%. And I think overall, like it was a better performance from this defense, and the defense is by far the phase of the game with the fewest issues right now, as my phone just collapses from the desk, which is tremendous. But yeah, it's a really tricky one because we can also then look at the offensive problems. There's no way they can improve them. The defense, if there's ever a positive, it's the one area where there's a glaring issue here. What do? We have options, whether it's trade, free agency, or like just experimenting with a few different things. With offense, and you look at the offensive line as an issue. You mentioned Toth earlier on. That running the ball between the tackles has been an issue all season long. I think the offensive line for most of the year has just been a step off of what we've come to expect. And nobody really wants to critique it just because of how much we cherish that group, how much we cherish Jeff Stoutland. So we're kind of stuck in catch-22 of like, well, we know it's bad, but we don't want to say it's bad because we love him. But then you can't do anything to fix it because they're all tied down outside of one man to long-term deals. Same with wide receiver, tight end maybe is the only other position. But so offense is the one where it has to come from within. Defense is a position or the group that's playing better, that's improving week on week. The secondary players you mentioned was better outside of a couple of miscues. Jalen Carter, I think, will get back to his old self. I think it's just been a process of a very bumpy start, and it's probably not the wind out of his sails from a confidence standpoint, and then just building that back up. Like that looked a lot more tenacious today, I thought. Like it wasn't always there, but it was definitely a bit more fiery. But yeah, this is the only group where they've got full flexibility at near enough every spot to do what they want and they feel viable. So I do have confidence in that, and I definitely have more confidence in Vic than I would in Kevin Patullo, and then getting those new pieces to contribute. But as we look forward to the Giants, obviously last Thursday was very much a rude awakening. The last time the Eagles had a slapping of that magnitude, I would say, was Tampa Bay last year before the bye. This time they do get a chance at revenge in the regular season a couple of weeks later after a big win. How winnable is this game now? And like, how much of it just was the fact that the Eagles are reeling and they couldn't really figure out why, versus this Giants team is for real? Because the Giants have been all right, but they were lining up with like practice squad receivers and they were just having a field day against a secondary that should have been much better. There is no way like Lil Jordan Humphreys should have gone off the way he did. That was never in the script. So now we're at a point where you go, okay, are these Giants teams actually any good? Or was it just an Eagles team that was misfiring and has now finally got that spring in its step again?
I think it's a combination of both. I think it was a tough spot for the Eagles. They're coming off a really tough physical game against the Broncos. And I don't know how these guys do it. They play Sunday and then they got to come back and go to Thursday, so it's a quick turnaround. And I just think that you can't view this Giants team as pushovers right now. The rookies in Jackson Dart and running back Cam Scatterbo, I mean, they've got these guys believing. I just checked the score. They're up 13-0 against a really good Denver defense on the road. Like this could be a statement game. Like they've got the ball right now on their own 36-yard line with 1:14. I mean, they could go up 3 scores potentially at half on the road. So this is a Giants team that's going to go into the link, have all the confidence in the world, even if they end up losing today. I don't want to say it's a coin flip. I think the Eagles will still have, more of a win percentage. I was just trying to look up the early lines to see what the book has it at, but I can't get to it right now. I would imagine that the Eagles would be like a 4.5 point favorite. I think they would be more than a field goal, but I don't know if Vegas is going to give the Eagles a respect of a full touchdown at home. Maybe 6.5 I could see. But I just think that this is a very pesky Giants team. They're kind of playing with house money. And the Eagles have all the pressure in the world because, as soon as they have 1 or 2 bad drives like they've had, you're going to hear the boo birds coming out at Lincoln Financial Field because they do not want to see a repeat of what happened Thursday night against New York. So I think it's a winnable game, obviously. I actually picked the Eagles to drop this one in Minnesota. That was more so with Quinyon Mitchell. I thought didn't have a great chance to play with a hamstring injury, but it wasn't as severe as it seemed. So I'm glad that I was wrong. But I just think that this Eagles team on paper, yes, way better than the Giants. You mentioned little Jordan Humphrey and Wan'Dale Robinson and some of these other guys that some, casual fans might have never heard of. They got to find a way to buckle down and realize, hey, the Giants aren't going to be the little brother of this division right now. So I think it's going to be a good game. I think it's going to be a tight game.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a primetime finish. I think it feels like that kind of way. Before we head off, if you guys have any questions or comments about the game, it's been great to see a lot of you guys in here again. I apologize for not streaming as much over the last few weeks. Just a few bumps in the road. We're moving to a new site. That's been happening. So you may notice, I mean, that'll be a full announcement Monday. So I shouldn't technically spoil anything yet, but that's all being changed over. And we're just trying to wait on word for a new YouTube channel to go along with it. So we're just waiting to get that ball rolling. We didn't want to go too heavy if it was all going to be moved over soon or what have you. But obviously, you'll be the first to know. And just thank you for being patient with us and continuing to support our streams when we are on. But yeah, any other closing comments from you, Corey? Anything you wanted to go over about what we've seen over the last couple of hours with this team?
I think Jalen Hurts still deserves credit to be a good quarterback. I know there's haters out there. We could do a whole show on Jalen Hurts, but I think he shows why they can win with him. I mean, he took over that second half. That touchdown drive to A.J. Brown in the second half, I thought was one of his best sequences as an Eagle. I mean, I thought it was reminiscent of some of the things he was doing in the Super Bowl last year. And I just think that if they can tap into this offense, who should be putting up 28 points in their sleep, if they could just figure it out now with Kevin Patullo, they've got the defense where it's not as dominant, but it's a bendable but not breakable unit. I think that this team can make another deep run and make it to the Super Bowl. It's not going to be easy. This schedule is tough. I think they have the third hardest schedule remaining, if I'm not mistaken, or they played the third hardest schedule right now, and it's not going to get that much easier regardless. We kind of broke it down a little earlier. So I like what I saw. There's still plenty of room for improvement offensively. This O-line just needs to get healthy. And I you made a great point, and I kind of chuckled, but you're right. It's like the huge elephant in the room because nobody wants to say, oh, well, hey, like these guys aren't really playing the way they should be over the last 2 years, but injuries are taking toll. I think if they could just get this unit healthy after the bye, things can change, but the running game has to get going. But overall, I'd give this win like a B+. I think this was a very solid win against a good Vikings team.
Yeah, I think I'd echo that. I think I would probably put it as like a B just because of the way they fought. And you're absolutely right with Jalen Hurts. And again, you're right in that we could spend a whole like 2-3 hours speaking about Jalen Hurts and addressing the critics and diving into the numbers and stuff. I think the one thing that sums Jalen Hurts up is a lot of people say that quarterbacks or certain quarterbacks are game managers, typically backup quarterbacks, that, they're a game manager. You put them in and they'll just keep everything short and, they'll protect the football. And people wrongfully, I think, associate that with Jalen Hurts because he never turns the ball over. I don't think Hurts is a game manager, but I think what he does better than most quarterbacks in the NFL is manage the emotions of a game in terms of if it's a high pressure situation, he's not afraid to take a shot. If he knows when to reel it back, when to let it go, when to run the ball, when to make changes at the line of scrimmage. As Duck said then, there were plenty of audibles and 2 of them led to touchdowns. So like he understands when to be aggressive, when to be conservative. He's probably got a tremendous future ahead of him as a head coach, should he ever want that after his playing days are done. But people don't give him credit for that he doesn't get lost in the moment of things. Like, as long as the ball's alive and it's in his hands, there's a chance. And that is the best thing you could ever say to a quarterback. And it might not come right away. It might take 8 yards of grinding and grueling, horrible 3-yard slants and comebacks and Saquon getting 2 yards of carry. But it's coming. And the fact that that is there and it's a possibility and the chances of a dumb decision or a turnover or a mistake are so minimal, you can't say that about many. Even Josh Allen. Like, Josh Allen plays at an unbelievable level, arguably the best quarterback in the NFL. Will still put the ball in jeopardy. We saw it last year in the AFC Championship game. Hurts doesn't do that. That's the best thing you could say about him, is that he can do everything that everyone else does, but he just does that one little extra he's like a level above mentality-wise. And that's not to insult any of the other quarterbacks. They're all the best in the world. But you know what I'm saying? And just in terms of managing situations, I don't think there's many better. And I just wanted to give him that credit because, again, not many people will.
No, I agree with that 100%.
And then just to really quickly, we'll call it, I think I've done this before, I call him Alpha instead of A, because otherwise it sounds like I'm saying A, and then just calling him over. But he says, is it the offensive line or is it Saquon? I would just go out and say this, that if you watch any all 22 of Saquon Barkley running the ball, very rarely does he make a bad decision of where to cut, how hard he puts his foot down, when he accelerates, when he pulls out of bright. All of these 2-3 second split decisions you've got to make is effortless to him. And it was evident last year. You even look at him with the Giants when he was performing in bad offensive line groups. This is just similar to that. And that's not, again, a dig at this offensive front. But he's not being given many opportunities whatsoever to actually get upfield. I would argue that some of it is on Patullo. I'm not saying this is the offensive line in total, because if you look at where he carries, so much of it is north and south. And you know you can get him outside. And if the weakness is going to be a guard or a center or somewhere in one of those A or B gaps, and your strongest assets are the tackles outside, run him outside. Like, you've got A.J. Brown, who's a big boy and can make some big blocks. Dallas Goedert is a very proficient tight end blocker. You can get some runs outside. Saquon is more than capable of doing it. He's more than capable of catching screens and swings and orbits and all this fun stuff. That would be far more efficient than just sending him into what isn't working again and again and again, hoping that something changes. That would be where I just read Duck's comment and had to pause for a second there. But that would be how I view the situation. I don't know if you're in a similar boat on that, Corey, or about any other, like, maybe numbers or observations or anything.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both, and I mean, I love this next gen stats that they provide, but coming into this game, Saquon Barkley had been contacted behind the line of scrimmage on 52.6% of his carries, the sixth highest rate among running backs with at least 30 carries, and down nearly 15% points from where he was at 37.7% last season. So I think it's the fact that, you know, you got guys like Toth, who we saw today, that he just gets blown up on the spot. And listen, I'm not trying to pile on Toth. He's a great story. He's been able to hang around the league, but you are who you are in this league, and he's just not an elite lineman compared to what the Eagles have been able to put out over the last few years. So I think it's more so the O-line and the play design, where we've seen Barkley. They did that near field toss last week or against Denver. It worked beautifully, but they're not getting him outside more. So I think you're right, where they're running them up the gut. And even in this game, they pointed out Vikings had 8 guys in the box, and they're running it right up the tackles. Like, you just can't do that. Like, you're just asking for failure. And shockingly, he was met behind the line of scrimmage for a 3-yard loss. So I don't think it's on Barkley at all. I know the trend, and we talked about it. 2,000-yard rushers typically have a big dip in production the year following, just for whatever reason. But I don't think this is on Saquon really at all.
I mean, I would, for lack of a better analogy, and I know a lot of you guys are American, so hopefully a few of you are NASCAR fans that will be watching this. I would liken it to, if you're in a stock car and you're really quick in, like, coming out of corners, you wouldn't go quicker into corners because it would compromise the exit and you'll be slower coming out. And no matter what you do, the harder you push into a corner, the slower you'll be coming out. It's exactly the same thing. It's like, you know what you have in Saquon. You know where he can hurt you. You know where he's so good. So stop throttling it into a corner where you're going to compromise your exit. You'll be slow and everyone's going to overtake you and you'll be confused what's going on. That would be... I've used a sport analogy that isn't golf, so that's already an improvement. But that would be how I look at things. I think there's a lot of moving parts to it. Unfortunately, many of them are playing the offensive line would be my overall clarity. But I think overall, team's in a good spot. It's another win. We can't forget in a year that, I don't know about you, Corey, but this year feels special for a million weird different reasons. Like there are so many good little storylines around the NFL, so many young up and coming teams. One of them currently being beaten the wheels off of by a random New York Giants ascension that no one saw coming. The Falcons randomly look good. You've got just little bursts of like young talent popping up everywhere, and it's been so cool. And in a league where big teams are losing, look at what the Bills have done the last couple of weeks. The Ravens don't have Lamar Jackson. The Chiefs outside of today have been very beatable. This is a year that can go to anyone, and the Eagles still found a way to get their 5th win of the season. If we're still critical and we're concerned, that's absolutely fine. But let's just do it with the clarity of mind that this is still a team at the top of their division with one of the best records in the NFL, with one of the best rosters in the NFL, and that can still theoretically go all the way again.
I agree. I think there's a ton of parity in the NFL right now. And at the end of the day, the Eagles, as you said, will be atop the NFC East for yet another week. And that's all you can ask for. So you stack up the wins. That's a big NFC win against the Vikings, who most likely will be in the playoff picture at some point down the road. But yeah, I agree. You just continue to pile on the wins, figure out what to do. And as you see Scott here, yeah, I mean, the perfect passer rating, season high, 326 yards for Jalen Hurts. This might be the game that kind of gets that snowball moving down the mountain for this offense. And if they figure it out, look out, because we've been wanting this. I mean, we talked about last year with Kellen Moore, and it took a little while for the offense to get going. Obviously, with Brian Johnson the year before that, there's so much talent on this team that any given day they should be able to put up 28 to 30 points. So today was a good step in the right direction.
Yeah, 100%. And well, I think Duck's absolutely correct there. And that is the whole point of the NFL over something like soccer. But still, when you do finally see it, it doesn't make it any less fun, I would say. It's been a very enjoyable season so far, and hopefully will be even more enjoyable for the Eagles if they can rally away past the Giants, level up that nasty blemish on their win-loss record, especially in the division, knowing they have to play the Commanders twice. But all shall be revealed over the coming days. But from ourselves, we'll be back with you probably tomorrow and Tuesday. We've got Flipping the Birds coming up. I'll try and finally get a stream back in on Monday. Again, apologies for being a little bit MIA on that front. I promise it wasn't personal, and I do still love you all very dearly. But yeah, thank you for joining me, Corey. Any closing thoughts or stuff you wanted to get out there? Oh, I think your mic's muted. Sorry, I wasn't trying to interrupt you. So your microphone's muted.
Oh, sorry. I thought I pushed it right before I went on. No, just follow me on X at Cory_Nidoh, along with the rest of the Eagles team. David Neese, he'll be on site for the Giants game at the Link next week. I'll be back on site for the Black Friday game against the Bears, which now all of a sudden kind of looks a lot more intriguing than it did during the preseason. So, we're just churning out content, and, keep your eyes locked into PSN for some exciting things coming down the pipe.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, fellas and ladies, enjoy the rest of your evenings and what promises to be an interesting Sunday night football matchup with the Niners and the Falcons. And we will see you very, very soon for some more Eagles talk, and can't wait to get breaking it all down with you. So go Birds, enjoy the rest of your winning weekend, and we'll see you soon.